Hello, my name is Nicole Robson, and I will be presenting the paper Thinking with Sound, exploring the experience of listening to an ultrasonic art installation, on behalf of my co-authors Andrew McPherson and Nick Bryan-Kinns. In our paper, we consider the specific qualities of sound as a material, which inform the design of an ultrasonic art installation and a participant study employing micro-phenomenology to examine the experience of listening. Before we go any further, we'd like to engage you in a brief activity. We're going to pause the presentation for 10 seconds and invite each of you to perform a single clap in your own time and make it as emphatic as you can. As you do so, listen attentively to the sound that is produced and consider the questions, what do you hear and where? We propose that this clap is not merely the sound of one hand hitting the other, but two hands sounding with everything else, the room, furniture, bodies, carpets, windows, sounding indivisibly together. Furthermore, it doesn't have an audio reality out there in the material world. You might imagine it as a burst of energy that disturbs the air in the moment of striking, but the sound that you hear exists only in your perception. We imagine that in the moment of clapping, your attention is not directed toward inward sensations, but stretches outward, beyond the body to meet that burst of sonic energy as it unfolds in time. And so your relationship as a listener to the clap is somewhat complex and interrelated. Arguably, listening is an intermediary field that dissolves the notions of distant and separate subjects and objects based on the sensory modality of vision. Our paper explores the questions: how can we harness the relationality of sound in the design of an art installation? And how do listeners encountering that artwork experience their entangled relationship with sound? When we do research, we bring to bear a particular worldview. Sometimes without even realising, an underlying philosophy shapes our approach, the methods that we employ, and the knowledge that is generated. For example, you can position the world as an external reality that is knowable and measurable from a distant neutral standpoint. But this suggests that anything that cannot be seen and quantified is of little importance. Entanglement theories, which have become increasingly prominent in HCI discourse over recent years, represent an alternate way of thinking and position the world as continuous flux within which we are enmeshed. We see an alignment between entanglement perspectives and the materiality of sound. Our work draws particularly on the work of feminist science scholar Karen Barad, whose philosophy of agential realism posits that nothing exists independent of relations, emphasising, for example, that an experience with technology is co-produced in the moment of interaction, according to the meeting of a singular human with a particular material configuration, and that the research methods we employ to articulate lived experience, such as survey, body mapping, or interview, co-produce the data. The primary tool that we employ in our study is micro-phenomenology, an interview technique developed for eliciting fine-grained accounts of lived experience, including pre-reflective aspects that the interviewee may not have been consciously aware. Outside of HCI, there's a whole field of practice examining sound as a material, with some theorists connecting to the ideas of Barad and others to the phenomenology of Merleau-Ponty. Our paper offers an introduction to these texts. Being with the Waves is a multi-channel sound installation that we designed as both an artwork and research probe to be deployed in participant studies exploring the experience of listening to sound art. Its design is motivated by the observation that through the simple assembly of sound materials, playback technologies, and space, installations in the sound art tradition produce richly engaging experiences that foster attentive listening and embodied awareness, due to the listener's close entanglement with the phenomena of sound. In the design of Being with the Waves, we sought to augment this paradigm using digital technology as a mediating layer. The installation physically sounds in the exhibition space, but above the range of human hearing. A spatial composition is composed in the audible range and then shifted into the ultrasonic range using amplitude modulation before playing out via a series of speakers. Listeners hear the installation by wearing specially designed sets of headphones. Sound phenomena are captured by a pair of tiny microphones housed on the outside of headphone ear cups and routed to a teensy microcontroller where a piece of code shifts sounds back into audibility before being output to the headphones. The process of shifting sounds between the audible and ultrasonic range using amplitude modulation both alters the spatial appearance of sound and exaggerates the Doppler effect, such that listeners hear sounds bend and shift in a manner intimately connected with their bodily movement in the installation space. We wish to highlight that our design approach may be contrasted with interactive systems whereby sensor data acquires symbolic meaning in the computer program and a system of mappings determine the relationship between human action and sensory feedback of some kind. In Being with the Waves, perceived interactive qualities, i.e. of sound changing with respect to listener movements, are due to the relational character of sound as a material which is harnessed in the design as an active non-human participant, determining the installation's interactivity without knowing anything about the humans that encounter it. We deployed the installation in a participant study to learn how listeners experience their entangled relationship with sound. We staged the installation as an artwork in a dark university lab space, which we lit with coloured lights, as shown in this image. 10 participants listened individually to the installation before moving to a different space for an hour-long interview. This consisted of a semi-structured phase, which captured broad descriptions of experience as a whole, and then a micro-phenomenological interview which focused on short slices of the listener's experience. Interview questions were deliberately open and content-free, which led to a breadth of experiential descriptions including auditory perceptions, intentions, bodily sensations, mental imagery, emotions, and interpretations. To address our research question, we undertook a narrower analysis to examine listener experience of entanglement. The installation and study design embody certain theoretical ideas to do with sound. We sought an analysis method that would align with these values and not abstract away from the fine-grained detail produced by micro-phenomenology. We chose to engage in a diffractive analysis. This is a relational method advocated by Barrard that is attuned to how data is produced and to difference rather than sameness, which sets it apart from qualitative coding approaches such as thematic analysis. Our paper describes one way of implementing a diffractive analysis, which is to read the interview data with particular theories of sounding and listening. This produced 4 readings of the data, in which phenomenological descriptions are amplified by their relevance to particular theories. Here, descriptions and theory resonate. Our diffractive analysis also set the disciplines of sound studies and HCI into conversation with each other. Thinking with sound, we became aware of emergent differences concerning other accounts of entangled experience in HCI and taken for granted invisible dynamics of research methods. These wider reverberations are presented as provocations later in this presentation. First, we summarise our phenomenological findings. In the first, Participants describe the feeling of close connection with sound as having physical qualities such as viscosity and resistance, and this despite there being no tactile stimuli, only the Doppler effect. P3 saying, quote, "It feels like I'm walking against something, like there's a force that's pulling me back or trying to slow me down," end quote. We tend to think of technology relationships such as Ide's embodiment as fixed and immobile. Relational flux brings together descriptions of close bodily connections with sound that have an underlying temporal fluctuation, varying in intensity and location relative to the body. For example, P1 describes a drone sound as static, heavy, and infinite when listening in stillness, and as coming closer into the body and experienced as mobile and light during movement. Body sound alignment brings together descriptions of postures that are inspired by the sound of the installation and adopted to express a particular listening intention. These dispositions can't be described as either passive or active, and instead suggest an intention to align the body with sound. For example, P5 says that their, quote, "pose had that potential for stillness and yet movement. It had a constant alertness and smoothness around it like the music did," end quote. The speaker array in Being with the Waves is hidden from view. The microphones on the outside of headphones are so tiny as to go unnoticed, and the microcontroller and related circuitry are concealed in a box. Participants describe attempts to make sense of how the installation works, making hypotheses regarding the technologies involved. Their descriptions reveal an assumption that interactivity is configured via the mapping of sensor data to a sound engine, with changing auditory feedback output to the listener's headphones. For example, P2 makes a connection between the rate of change to the sound and the movement quality of their footsteps, leading them to believe there are pressure sensors in the floor. They describe listening carefully with this connection in mind and, quote, "trying to put that sound that was in my ears in my foot," end quote. These misconceptions are clearly influencing listening behaviours and shaping the experience of participants. Throughout our paper, we promote the sonic as an alternative orientation to the visual that might reveal different kinds of knowledge. We offer a series of 5 provocations for HCI, but we'll describe just the first 2 here and refer you to the full paper for more details. We propose entangled subjectivity as a useful design sensitivity in the context of somatic and experience-centered design. It is marked by an attentional disposition that is directed outward to meet the non-human world and an ongoing awareness of relationality. An entangled subjectivity is neither introspective, examining one's own thoughts and bodily sensations, or extrospective, examining what is outside oneself. Instead, it is a hybrid perspective that subtly decenters the human. Moving against the tide of computational complexity, we offer the provocation to sense less, know less, and quantify less. The prevalence of the event loop paradigm may be constraining both the design and experience of new technologies. The expectation of sensors foregrounds a cognitive mode of engagement, whereby a user works to make sense of a system. By harnessing the materiality of sound as an active determinant in the configuration of interaction, it is our conviction that this approach promotes interactive experience that is richly multidimensional, nuanced, and visceral, addressing ongoing embodied thought and reflection. In conclusion, contributing to the fields of post-human and more than human design, this paper offers a practical implementation of entanglement theories and agential realism, seeking consistency between epistemological commitments, design intentions, and qualitative research methods. We decentered human agency in the design of Being with the Waves by working with and harnessing sound's materiality, and in the articulation of listening experiences by targeting an entangled subjectivity. Our findings highlight relational, temporal, and mobile qualities of interactive experience and emphasize the plural nature of listening. We believe that sound as a material can lead to new ways of thinking about interaction design and entanglements with technology. Thank you.